Hey, Alex here from Split Zone Duo. This is the full extended cut interview with Steve Baker, the longtime play-by-play voice of the Miami University football program. It's a companion for our subscribers to go with our recently released episode of Dead Letters that just came out on the Split Zone Duo feed. I'll just note this is a rough format. Interviews are not really spruced up, polished up, fact-checked in the same way that an actual episode is. So you'll notice one or two things that I might be off on or corrected on in the course of the interview, but figured we kind of leave it as it is so that you can just see how the interview actually goes. I think the one that sticks in my mind is that I want to say I said in here that Randy Walker, former Miami coach, made a Rose Bowl at Northwestern, but I was misremembering. It was Gary Barnett. That's the kind of thing you catch before you release an actual episode edit. But taking you behind the curtain a bit to see the way that a Split Zone Duo interview comes together that goes into Dead Letters. So thank you for your support of Dead Letters and this project, and we'll roll the interview. Hope you enjoy it as much as I did.
We're coming, and we ain't backing down.
We don't need a bunch of cats in here looking in the mirror.
Everybody just do your job. You understand that?
Hey, will you shut up?
I'm bitterly disappointed with the officiating today.
Guys being dudes.
And they run through our like through a tin horn, man.
Welcome to this interview with Steve Baker, the longtime voice of the Miami Redhawks football program and a bunch of sports. Steve, you are an inductee class of 2024 to the Miami University Sports Hall of Fame. That's
yes,
a great honor.
Yeah,
congratulations.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
And you earned it because you were there for a very, very long time. Is my
And still
understanding.
there, as a matter of fact. Yeah, I retired from Miami University as the director of broadcasting after 21 years, but I still do the games, so I don't have to worry about the 9 to 5, but still get the joy of calling games on football, men's basketball, women's basketball, and volleyball. And we do a lot of ESPN Plus, as everybody does these days. So I do those games as well. But it's been a joy. I grew up around Oxford, just across the state line in Brookville, Indiana, and have always been familiar with Miami University. And I moved around in radio. I was a disc jockey for years, and I came back to Oxford in 1984. And was working at a alternative radio station, one of the first 6 commercial alternative radio stations in the country that happened to be broadcasting Miami sports. We did football, men's basketball, and hockey. And in 1984, I started working the broadcast as an engineer, halftime, pregame, and postgame host, and filled in for play-by-play and color as needed. And really, because I was so familiar with it, I went to high school and middle school in the 70s when Miami was so great. And the 3 teams that won 3 straight Tangerine Bowls over SEC schools. And, so I was familiar with Miami, but, geez, you learn so much more once you're really involved in it. It's been a lot of fun.
I imagine that you do. And it's got to be cool to be the guy, like the institution who kind of is like almost the historical custodian of the program. I was in touch with the SID at Miami about who should I talk to, and he's like, call Bake. So that's what we're doing.
Yeah, it's interesting because we did a series. Miami's bicentennial was 2009, and we did a series called Miami Memories where we did 200 video features on all the sports. And it was interesting to put together because I thought it would be so hard to do 200 of these, counting down to the bicentennial day. And it was really a piece of cake because when you look at the program as a whole, there is so much history, not only with football, but with all the other sports that really made it easy to put all of these together between the games, the people, the coaches, the players. It was actually a lot of fun. And actually, I still use some of those in our pregame show for football. Those kind of lived on for the next 18 years or whatever it's been.
So you get to Miami, it's the 1980s, and so you're kind of jumping in a little bit after. I mean, a couple of decades after Schembechler was there, after Bill Mallory was there.
Right,
so,
right.
The cradle of coaches aura has been established.
Yeah.
I'm wondering to what extent that's like a tangible thing that is felt at Miami, like what the presence of history is.
It is the single most thing I think that Miami University is known for as far as football is concerned. And it's still active today. I mean, most recently, Sean McVay and John Harbaugh, when the Ravens won the Super Bowl, had statues erected in the Cradle of Coaches Plaza. And I was lucky enough in the 80s when I came in and started being in the booth and, really paying attention to Miami football. Weeb Eubank would come to practices. He lived in Oxford until he passed, and he would come to practices and you'd see him kind of watching things, and then he'd go over and talk to the coach and spend some time talking with the coach. And a big influence in the program. John Pott was in the broadcast booth. He was our color analyst, and he had a great career, obviously, at IU and a playing career at Miami. Went on to coach in Japan for several years, and then came back and coached high school before he passed. But I also had the opportunity to meet and talk with Bill Mallory and Bo Schembechler and Ara Parsegian. I met Paul Dietzel and Carm Koza when we had their statues dedicated, the original 8 of the Cradle of Coaches, which you can see the original poster back there behind me.
Yeah.
And, it is one of those things that if you're wherever, we could travel to a lot of games and big schools. And the first thing you say when they say you're from Miami University is the Cradle of Coaches, especially if we're there to play football.
Yeah, the list does just kind of go and go. Like you mentioned, Weeb Eubank, who's a pro football Hall of Famer. I think a lot of people are familiar with Harbaugh, McVay. We just mentioned a bunch of guys
Paul
who went
Brown.
on. Paul Brown.
Paul Brown is the Ohio institution as far as football is concerned, between the Browns and the Bengals, and his great coaching career.
It's just kind of an astonishing list that I think even if you're aware of this general history, like Parsegian, Woody Hayes, Bo Schembechler, Bill Mallory, even Dick Crum, Terry Hepner, Randy Walker won a Rose Bowl at Northwestern. There's a ton of these. It is kind of unprecedented. And so what I'm curious about is, I mean, it can't just be good luck, because that's too much good luck.
No, I mean, there's still other coaches when you do, not even in head coaches. I mean, Dan Dalrymple has been a strength coach in the NFL for 15 years. Sean Payton. There's so many other coaches and assistant coaches at the college ranks and even in the NFL ranks that go on. And the Cradle of Coaches Association encompasses all coaches within Miami, and that's all sports. But the football Cradle of Coaches, and it goes on today. Chuck Martin's done an outstanding job with his coaching staff for years. His first several years, it was static. And then you see coaches start moving up, and his philosophy is, hey, I can't pay them what they're making at the other schools. Just can't do it. So that's going to happen. And you see those guys having great success and always have. I mean, Kevin Wilson, who also coached at Indiana for a while, was Randy's assistant and main assistant, and went on to coaching success. So, the Cradle continues to grow. And even on John's program and Sean's program, they take care in, if there's Miami guys available, they're going to give them the first look.
So what do you think it was or is? Because I don't want to act like it's gone. I mean, you mentioned that Miami has sent some assistants up to other gigs. What do you think was or is the secret sauce here? Because it's just so many over so many decades that it can't just be, you've got a special idea in your head about what it takes to hire a good coach. Like you know by the grip of his handshake that he's going to be good. So was it nature, nurture?
I think it was a lot of the coaches really caring about their players and not only getting them to do what they're coached, but also explaining why. And, and going through, and, when this first was mentioned as the Cradle of Coaches, Bob Kurz, who was the SID way back when, coined the phrase Cradle of Coaches. And that's, when Era and Bo and, even Sid Gilman back in the day, um, was really, kind of changing the game as far as the players. I mean, they coached great players, and those players wanted to coach with that coach. I mean, John Pont came up coaching, with the other coaches, and you get that first start with your guy, with your head coach, and then grow from there. And the head coaches weren't hesitant about hiring the guys that they really trusted from former teams to be assistant coaches. It was actually an easy hire. And that's how I think it got steamrolled into that way. I mean, Randy certainly, he had 2 or 3 players, former players, and guys he played
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
on that coaching staff, Jack Gloyd,
Played
Kevin
with at
Wilson.
Miami.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And had them on the coaching staff. And, it perpetuates itself. And, it always has. And, it's a special place, man. Robert Frost called the campus the prettiest campus that ever there was. And, it is and always has been, to me anyway, because I grew up around here, but it is a family feeling. I mean, all of our coaches, and I mean, every single one of them, are not an interview nightmare. And you can get coaches that are, but all of these people
Sure.
are personable. They care about their athletes, and Chuck recruited when he got here as, look, you can go to college, play football at a Division I level and a fairly high Division I level when you take a look at the opponents, and you can get a quality degree from an established from an established Division I university. It can be done. I mean, Notre Dame sold that for decades.
Sure. And that's
And
where he had been.
yeah. And it rings true with these kids. Now, with the portal and everything else, that's not so much the case, because these guys, and you can't blame them, they're looking for cash if they can play. But, it is just one of those things that, that has always been kind of the philosophy of all of our coaches. And that goes really across the board to all of our coaches in all the sports.
You mentioned earlier in a couple of spots just the finances of it all.
Yeah.
The MAC is never going to be anywhere close to the richest conference in college football. But I am curious, to the extent that there's one standard answer for this over the decades of the Cradle of Coaches, because it is decades. How would you kind of classify where Miami has been in the financial pecking order? Like, you can look at the budgets and it seems like it's kind of upper middle of the MAC, but certainly I can't find any evidence that Miami was ever just dropping bills on football in a way that outstripped the rest of the MAC, which also makes me
not
really
at all.
curious.
I mean, probably the most money we've spent is in the last 11 years that Chuck's been here to build the indoor facility, build the offices and the offices and locker room facility on the north end. And certainly the Cradle of Coaches Plaza and all of that has been built since David's been here. But, I remember playing, doing a game against Michigan State, probably in the 80s. And usually I'll go down to the field before a game and take a look around and so familiarize myself with numbers and names and that sort of thing. And I mean, I remember walking on the field and like, geez, this is coal-fired versus nuclear power. I mean, and this was in the 80s, and it's always been a war of some kind between the bigger conferences and the MAC, or the lesser conferences, the G5 conferences, whether it's for athletes or now for money. And it's been a money grab for a long time. I mean, and they're just starting to getting it figured out. But, the MAC, as you said, is never going to be that conference. But the whole portal makes it impossible to compete consistently on that level. I mean, Chuck, when he got here 10 years ago, he said, I'm going to build a program.
Yes.
We may have to start from scratch. And I think his recruiting class the first year had like 20 tight ends, and they were still bigger than our offensive and defensive line. So that's why he recruited them. He made them offensive and defensive linemen. And he built this program. When you take a look, especially at MAC play over his years, this has been the winningest team in the Mid-American Conference. And, now, and it doesn't matter what sport, you can't build a program. You just can't do it.
Miami has been, I think, and we've talked about this, Bake, on our show before, maybe the most acute example of a G5 team just getting portal rated. It's, take your pick of your best players at Miami over the last few years.
Yeah.
There's Lou grows a kicker, goes to Miami.
Yeah.
I know Chuck was not happy about that.
No.
There's a really good defensive end, goes to Oklahoma. Great running back, goes to Ole Miss. Interestingly, kept the quarterback, Blaine Gabbert, for a long time. But so I'm curious how, because the other thing about this is that Miami made the MAC title game last year. Miami, I think, has done the only thing that you can do, which is kind of limit your bitching about it and then just go
rebuild.
And continue to recruit players.
And that's Chuck's philosophy. Right? Yeah. And Chuck's philosophy now has changed. And it's like, no, we can't build. We have to reload every year. And when you take a look at who we signed in the portal this year, that is the case. A former Mid-American Conference Player of the Year comes back from Baylor and is ready to go. And, we signed so many guys from the portal this year because we lost so many guys. I mean, you mentioned Brett, excuse me. But we also lost Matt Salopek, two guys that are the program. I mean, one offense, one defense, and elected to stay with the program and got rewarded for it. And that's, to me, that's what's disappointing. And you can't blame the players for taking the money. And, we lost those guys you mentioned to those schools, and a wide receiver gets 5 catches. The running back gets maybe 15 carries. And you got paid, but you have no shot at the NFL. If you stay at Miami, you're going to be first team All-MAC. Be the guy and have a shot. At least have a shot at the NFL.